The Brewhouse was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee Brewery, but the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewhouse.com. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by Genesee Brewhouse. Nice to have Carl Falk back in.
Thanks for having me.
Alrighty, and Pat Duffy, what are you wearing today?
Oh, I realized I hadn't worn a slug during my 50th anniversary Sabres celebration.
Slug?
You got the Ryan Miller slug, and I always feel bad for Ryan Miller because he's arguably the greatest American goaltender of all time, but not even close to the greatest goaltender in his franchise's history because of Dominic Hasek. So he gets caught in this like no man's land.
Miller notwithstanding, were they ever sorry they did the slug, or did they ever know?
Well, everybody makes fun of the slug now. I love the slug. I will die on my slug hill. I love the slug when it came out. I will love the slug forever.
Man, it's a great slug.
I got some snow on it. I'm sorry.
You know, Carl, the first time I heard this, it was from Jim Rome. When he came out, he said, you know, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And at the time, I thought that is the most arrogant, negative thing you could say. And now, looking back on it, it's like maybe I was just a little ignorant. Well, this comes up because of the whole Houston Astros thing this week.
Yeah, and baseball seems to be the sport where we see more of this. You've got the steroid era, and of course that's all cheating. But go way back. Sign stealing, all the things that have gone on, cutting the baseball, spitballs, grease balls, all of those things were always part of the game. If you got caught, you got penalized. The Houston Astros, what they've done, allegedly, is a little different because it's electronically stealing signs, using center field cameras to see the catcher's signs, transmitting that electronically to the dugout, and somebody creating a noise to let people know who are batting what's coming or what's not coming in some cases. So this is a whole different realm, and your Red Sox, they got in trouble for using an iPad. The Yankees had Apple Watch situations.
They're my Red Sox when something bad happens.
They're not your Red Sox the rest of the time?
Well, you guys don't talk as much about them when that happens.
But
well, I mean, in the Patriots
but they did.
too.
Oh, it is funny. It is funny how all of a sudden cheating, not trying. That was the most arrogant statement ever. Till I realized I was a Patriots fan, and all of a sudden that stuff happened.
Except that those incidences, and it goes all the way back to when Catalani used to always bring up David Ortiz and have a good laugh, thinking it's at my expense. Those are embarrassing moments for guys who follow those teams, and those things happened. I wasn't proud of them, and I don't defend them.
I get it, but to Carl's point, I think there's a difference between doing something behind closed doors and intentionally covering it up because you know it's wrong versus what the Astros are doing here. Like, first of all, you're using electronic stuff, which is a huge no-no. And it's not like you were doing some crazy thing. It was a TV screen in your dugout that was telling you what was going on. And then,
garbage.
Yeah, if you're gonna cheat, be better than one bang for a slide or two bang for a curve. Like how it took 2 years for this to come out is insane. How did not one single baseball nerd, you know how nerdy baseball players are, realize, hey, wait a minute, every time he bangs the drum once, a slider's coming.
And they move from team to team, and that's why this Mike Fiers comes up with it. I don't get how any of this stuff is possible, because every year the guys who were in on the joke one year are the victims of the joke the next, and they seem perfectly willing to do that.
But it leads me to think they're not the only ones. You know, go to the Patriots. You mentioned them, Spygate. Do you think they were the only team that had done that? Absolutely not. All of these teams are looking for an edge, and they'll use any edge they can. If you do something that works, guess what? I'm going to steal it and use it as well.
And Mangini was a pariah for going public with it.
But there's your example as to why you don't say anything. There is a code of silence inside these locker rooms. I mean,
Absolutely.
Listen, I mean, we all talk to people inside the business, and there are things that we hear that we don't necessarily know are true, where if you said it out loud, people's jaw would drop. That being said, I have a really hard time knowing that there's going to be a fine. Like, this championship is going to stand as legit. Like, people will complain about it, but it's going to stand as legit. Look at the splits, the home and away splits during those playoff series for the Houston Astros when it comes to batting average. There are some guys that are swinging 150, 200 points difference between home and away, and how that wasn't noticeable at the time. I mean, in retrospect, hindsight being 2020, it's insane that it took someone to come out and say this to figure it out.
One of the worst things in sports to me is when you vacate a championship. You know, those Michigan Fab 4 teams, Fab 5 teams did not go to the Final Four, we're led to believe, because Chris Webber took money. So they were vacated. We all watched it. We all saw it. Marcus Camby at UMass. We saw it.
Jim Boeheim.
Jim Boeheim. He doesn't have 1,000 wins. I've seen him win 1,000 games. Don't vacate it. Figure out penalize with draft picks like the NFL did with the Patriots. Do other things. Don't vacate wins.
But that would never happen in baseball.
Well, how could you? To your point, I mean, it would change the history of everything. And if you have a guy like Barry Bonds that's still sitting atop the home run leaderboard, well, how are you going to vacate a World Series? The funniest part of this, real quick, Verlander, years ago, coming out publicly and saying, we got to figure out how to keep guys from stealing signs. Like, I saw the headline this morning when he was playing in Detroit. It showed up on Twitter again. And all of a sudden, hey, you're welcome for your World Series ring, Broseph.
And that one just kills me because those guys move around.
Absolutely.
How is it even possible to steal signs when your own dugout can't see what you're doing and the other one, I never understood this stuff.
I always feel when somebody brings up Bonds, I feel it's my obligation to point this out. When you show me who didn't cheat, which I think is a very short list, then I'll get mad at Barry Bonds and whoever else cheated.
I'm just saying, like, for all of the question marks, like you said, there are throughout all of sports history. You're right. It's impossible to focus on one thing because we don't know what the heck was going on behind closed doors and all those other places.
We are the Rochester Press Box and presented by the Genesee Brew House. We talk Buffalo Bills next. The Press Box is brought to you in part by Bay & Goodman Pizza, a local Rochester favorite. Corner of North Winton and Browncroft, Bay & Goodman Pizza. Welcome back and thanks for joining us. We're the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House, talking Buffalo Bills. How much damage was done last week in that loss to Cleveland?
I don't know. I mean, listen, I was here last week, and exactly what I said happened. I was worried that the Browns had too much talent for the coaching staff to ruin. Here's my concern now. As I'm watching that game and what the Bills are doing, that exact same concern that I had for the Cleveland Browns, that the coaching staff is holding back the talent on the roster, is now a concern I have for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, you have Devin Singletary carry the ball eight times. I know you haven't targeted 7 times in the passing game, but how? Against the worst, one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL, you only have 13 planned runs throughout that game. In a game where you lost by 2 points. It's mind-boggling. And it's starting to become apparent, it seems to me, that Josh Allen doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing out there because they showed the stat during the game. What was it? 3 touchdowns, 6 interceptions over the first 4 games since 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. Yet the Bills' offense is scoring less than a point more per game every single week. He looks not as good, even though his statistics are where the coaching staff wants it to be. And there are times where he's holding the ball where he sees something he thinks he wants to take advantage of, and he won't. I wonder what's in his head right now.
Well, and I think it's a mixed message to Josh Allen. We want him to be the guy who can go out and win a game with 340 yards and look great doing it. The coaching staff, and I'm convinced this comes from Sean McDermott, Philosophy 101. We keep the other team from scoring. We don't have to score much. So therefore, do everything offensively to help the defensive side of the ball. In the process of doing that, what you're really doing, though, is you're stifling the growth of your young quarterback. Josh Allen's been shackled, and I know the deep ball is a huge problem, but they haven't been aggressive with the pass game. He threw it 41 times, which I go with you. How do you do that a week after Devin Singletary's coming out party? It's one of those things, though, that you've got 2 agendas. Develop your quarterback to be the guy you drafted him to be, or keep games close to try to win to get a playoff berth this year. The Browns game was going to be a tipping point, in my opinion, because the second half of this schedule is a lot different today than it was a month ago. You look at teams like Denver, who are suddenly playing a little bit of offense in spite of the fact they have no quarterback, 4th best defense in the league. The Dolphins, who they play this week, they're really good. And Brian Flores has them playing hard. This is not going to be an easy game.
You did say the Dolphins are really good.
They're playing really good. I didn't say they're good. They're playing really good. If you've watched the last couple of games, they play hard. They're doing good things. They have no
did the
talent.
First time when they came into Buffalo.
They should have beat the Bills the first time, but Ryan Fitzpatrick did that.
They were overachieving as a winless team.
And here's 2 other things: is the Steelers, all of a sudden, the defense has been great, and Mason Rudolph's not killing them. And the Raiders, they're both only a game behind the Bills. It's not guaranteed they're going to be a playoff team now.
The good part about it is you have that win over the Titans. You're good head up there. You get to play the Steelers head up, and you still have a game advantage. So at this point, you control your own destiny. I understand the fear of the schedule upcoming, but here's the thing. For the first time this season, I am not any kind of nervous about a football game, right? I was terrified of that first Dolphins game, you remember, right? Ryan Fitzpatrick has put 2 really good games together. In reality, 4 back-to-back really good games together. And knowing Ryan Fitzpatrick as well as I do, I feel like we're pretty much cousins beard-wise.
His is better.
How dare you? How dare you? This is the game where it falls apart. The Bills, this is going to be the first dominant win that the Buffalo Bills have this season. It's the perfect storm. You're coming out of Cleveland. There's questions about what's going on. Singletary's coming. This is where you fix the run game, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to Fitz all over himself. This is the first time.
You're invoking the law of averages.
I'm telling you. No, I just know him. I know Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's going to happen. Big win for the Bills this weekend. Not even concerned.
What do you think?
I think the Dolphins will give them all they can handle yet again. And you're right about Fitz. Fitz always is going to Fitz. It's just what he does. It's what he is. It's who he is. He's done it everywhere. If he doesn't, I think this is going to be a really tough one because I do think the Bills are going to have to, at some point, score 30 points in a game. Can they do that? Do they have enough offense, and does Brian Daboll have enough in his playbook to get that done?
We are the Rochester Press Box. We're presented by the Genesee Brew House. Like it or not, it's next. Here's the Press Box trivia question brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Here's the Press Box trivia answer brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. We're the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brew House. Like it or not, this kid, Chase McLaughlin, kicker for the San Francisco 49ers, Monday night, misses a big kick near the end of the game. Tessitore says that the moment was too big for him. Like it or not, that kind of comment.
Hated it because actually the bigger kick was the 47-yarder he hit at the end of regulation. That actually gave him a chance. If he doesn't make that one, they lose the game right then and there. The one in overtime, they got the ball back actually and could have won after that. And Joe Tessitore, has he ever played at a high level of anything? To say the moment's too big, I think that's a cheap shot.
I always hate it when, especially like an athlete who says, "Oh, you never played the game." You're crossing over that line.
But I think in this case, for somebody who hasn't to say somebody who has and is a choker, I think that's a little bit too over the line.
This color guy backed him up.
Yeah, and that guy shouldn't be the color guy. He should be somewhere else doing another job. He is terrible at his job. This is the worst Monday night crew in the history of Monday Night Football. This used to be a prestigious gig. You got that gig? You used to get that gig and it meant something. They got rid of the worst guy ever last year, Jason Witten, and they elevated a guy who's worse.
We're getting on lawn territory here, and I feel like I might have to get off your lawn. I feel like I'm getting on lawn territory.
I know. It used to be something, though. And you know what's crazy? The radio crew on Monday Night Football, Kevin Harlan and Kurt Warner, are fantastic.
Yeah. I remember when he said that on Monday Night Football, I cringed. At the time he said it, I was like, so like, how much is too much? What can you say and what much? What can you say and what can't you say?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, also because, Chase McLaughlin, and there are people that thought he should have won the job over Hauschka, whatever. But, I mean, you're right. How many 47-yarders does a guy have to kick in one single game?
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, was that his first NFL game? Was that his first NFL game ever?
He was signed earlier that week.
So, like, you haven't been on this team. This is your first game is NFL primetime. You kicked that. Yes, I mean, it was a stupid comment to make, obviously. But, I don't know, what else are you going to say in that moment? He missed it, and then we kind of sit there and do this?
Evaluate the kid. Yeah, tough spot for a kid who's just up. There's better ways to insinuate it.
I'm already doing this.
Like it or not, 85-year-old Don Cherry lost his job in Canada.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Don Cherry, I know there are a lot of folks, CBC Hockey Night in Canada, now it's Sportsnet. Don Cherry to Canada, there is no equivalent to this country. There is no sports equivalent. He is John Madden on steroids. Let me put it this way. A couple of years ago, they did the ranking of the most important Canadians in the history of Canada. Not hockey, the country. And Don Cherry was 7th. Okay, I mean, he's hosted Coach's Corner on CBC and Sportsnet for decades. That being said, Don Cherry should have been fired 20 years ago. He's got a history of doing stuff like this. And it was just a matter of time before he said something that got him let go. And I remember I got on Twitter the day that he said what he said. And if you aren't familiar with the comments, he essentially said in so many words, the folks that have come over to Canada, they wear poppies for Remembrance Day, what they call Veterans Day over there. And they ask folks to buy a poppy to raise money for the veterans and show your support. He didn't like the folks that came over to this country, and I believe his quote was, enjoying the milk and honey of Canada that the veterans gave you. And he pointed to the camera and said, you people, which is what buried him. My jaw dropped. Like, even for Don Cherry, holy crap. The guy deserved to lose his job. He probably deserved to lose his job 10 years ago. And the fact of the matter is, this is another case of a sports guy being caught 40 years in the past. He's a guy that advocates for fighting. He, in fact, called former NFL enforcers pukes and hypocrites after they came out and said that their brains were hurting right before former NHL enforcers, Derek Beauregard and Wade Belak ended up dying of drug overdose and potential suicide stuff. Like, you let him keep talking, he was going to hang himself. And listen, I have a hard time crying tears for Don Cherry right now.
We are the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse, and Unfinished Business is next. And now here's this week's MVP Experience Stat of the Week, brought to you by Sport Clips, where it's good to be a guy. No appointment ever needed.
And now to Eichel. He floated one.
I know you're not supposed to look straight at it, but...
Man, it looks delicious.
Get ready for a whole new way to start the day. Introducing the great-tasting, plant-based Beyond Sausage Sandwich. Only at Dunkin'.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Unfinished Business, brought to you by Dunkin'. America runs on Dunkin'.
I did stand-up comedy for about 9-10 years of my life. And back when I was 21, 22 years old, I played a college in Indiana called Evansville University. Go Aces, right? I killed it that night, obviously. I'm very talented. And I hadn't thought about Evansville University in years. That wasn't until earlier this week, when Evansville went to Kentucky and upset the #1 Kentucky Wildcats on their own floor. Something else happened a couple of weeks ago. There you go. Syracuse scored 34 points in an entire game against Virginia. And Jim Boeheim freaks out because you're not supposed to play league games, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line is this. I love what's happening in college basketball right now, college sports in general, because for the first time in a very long time, there is consistency when it comes to legitimately any team on the floor has a chance to beat any other team on the floor. What did I see? That Evansville victory was the third largest victory based on how many points there were to cover in NCAA history. Kentucky was one of the other ones, which I also enjoyed. I'm going to buckle in and I'm going to have fun watching college basketball, because for the first time since I can ever remember, when I turn on the TV, I think there's a legitimate chance for any team, no matter conference or size, to walk off a winner. Way to go, Evansville. You're welcome for that win.
The NFL is a quarterbacks league. We hear that all the time. And last year, 5 quarterbacks were taken in the first round. The players are very important, and also as important and hidden is the situation they come into. Think of last year's quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield's on his second head coach and soon to be his third. Sam Darnold on his second head coach, and any Jet fan watching is hoping soon to be his third. Josh Allen's first quarterback coach had never held the position before. Josh Rosen, well, nobody's been in a worse position than Josh Rosen. And then at the end of the first round last year, Lamar Jackson was taken. Arguably the greatest athlete ever to play the position, and that's saying something. But John Harbaugh, an excellent head coach, and Greg Roman, a guy who the Bills and Rex Ryan fired after the defense gave up 38 points, designed an offense that Jackson's athleticism could thrive in. He's now an MVP candidate, and people are wondering, how did we miss on this guy? Maybe you didn't miss on him. You missed the opportunity to develop something around the guy you had.
So who collectively did the Buffalo Bills have to sleep with to get that schedule? Sure, they play the Dolphins and the Jets, and that's a product of the division they play in. But you got the Bengals, you got the Giants, the Redskins, the Titans, and the Broncos. I mean, that's just incredible. So we discount the value of the Buffalo Bills' victories this year, and that's fair. But there's something else to consider here. Yes, we're expected now to win those games and beat those teams. What we forget about is the Buffalo used to be one of those teams, and it wasn't that long ago. Mike Catalani used to always say, it says the Buffalo Bills never get anybody's best game. They get their worst game because they're the trap team. They're the team that you're supposed to win. You're supposed to win over. So it's like, The times have changed. We're expected to beat this collection of bad teams. And what we forget is that we used to be one of those teams. And the fact that we're not anymore is real progress. Unfinished Business. Well, it's presented by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. Carl, good to have you again. Let's do
Thanks
this
for having me. I appreciate it.
another time.
Yeah.
Pat?
Got to pay for that schedule next year.
Oh,
Oh,
how do you get that?
I don't know.
And if they don't cash this one in this year, it's like,
You ruined my day.
yeah, but you're so confident against the Dolphins.
Oh, no, this one's good. We're good.
Thank you for joining us. See you next week with the Rochester Press Box.